Welcome to Parasortium. Today we're speaking with our friend Steve Berg. He's an actor, an investigator of paranormal just like us. This episode is titled Ghost Cake for reasons you'll see. Please join our conversation. Hi Steve, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, my friend. How are you doing? Thanks for having me on.
I'm great, and I'm glad to have you here. Can you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Steve Berg, and I'm an actor and podcaster and high strange enthusiast. Yeah, I'm a professional actor. I kind of like do a lot of stuff on the comedic acting side, or when I do work, it's more comedic acting stuff. I started off doing sketch comedy and improv and stand up and all that stuff out in LA, lived there for 21 years. And now I'm back in Omaha, Nebraska. I moved back here to be closer to my parents. And I just kind of zoom off to LA when I get a gig. And yeah, it's kind of going back and forth. But what I've done since I've lived here, though, just getting right into it, is I have really kind of made Eastern Nebraska specifically my little microcosm for in my little laboratory for looking into the strange and unusual. Just kind of collecting old cases, really exploring the folklore and the mythology of these like little tiny rural towns. And what I've dug up, to me at least, is quite fascinating because I don't know how much research you do, your listeners do, but if you were just relying on Google to find stuff in your area, you're missing like 80% of it. Google is very limited, but I think a few years ago, before I started really looking into Nebraska specifically, I was like, well, some things have happened here, but nothing too crazy. Man, I was wrong, you know? So yeah, I guess I consider myself a actor by day, high strange researcher by night.
That's awesome. Uh, That's the finding the strange in your local area.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Google doesn't do you justice at all.
No, 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 no.
Eh, like here we for years we just Googled stuff and said, okay,
Yeah,
well, there's nothing here.
right.
And as soon as you scratch the surface, man, does it open up to you. You get
Yeah. Yeah. It's for a while I was my first realization that how limiting the internet can be. Obviously, well, like I'm a big whatever, not trying to be cocky, but I am a voracious reader of books about UFOs, cryptids, weird esoteric ideas, the metaphysics and all that stuff. So I do read a lot, and that is where I will find a lot of my stuff. But when I moved back here, I was really like, to me, I'm really attracted to rural weirdness.
yeah.
I think because I like the vibe of it better. Like when things weird happen in a city, it's obviously interesting and cool and should be paid attention to. But there's something kind of like almost throwback retro 1950s about like a case that happens like in like rural, just rural areas that really like get me excited. So I started driving around to rural, like small little towns, like I'm talking like villages of like 100 people. And I would go to the county because these little towns didn't have a historical society, or many of them even a library. But I was talking to people in historical societies in different counties and historians and librarians, and they really were super helpful. They were like, well, come on in here. We'll let you go through the microfiche and the old files and stuff like that. And we have a keyword search we can use here, blah, blah, blah. But I started finding all these great things. And so I was going around and printing them up. And then, I mean, like I'm so late to the party. Uh, about a year after wasting a lot of gas money, I found out about newspapers.com. And that to me, like if you're a researcher of any kind, not just into the weird, it's like $35 for the whole year. And it is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So I found just so much stuff. And to me, it's such a rush. It's such a buzz just to like when I have some free time, type in like glowing orb and search a county like in Nebraska or even like the kind of adjacent states and just find so much. It's really fun.
I love that part of research
Yeah.
when you're finding stuff and then you find something that just piques your interest right away, and it becomes a whole rabbit hole of this and 10 other things in that area. And then
Right.
all of a sudden you're having synchronicities
Hmm.
around that. And like I was saying to Joshua, we have phenomena bombs.
Right. Joshua Cutchin.
Yeah.
I was just texting with him before. That's funny.
Right on.
There's a synchronicity right there.
Right there.
Not
Awesome.
just 10 minutes ago. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, phenomena bomb is basically uh, synchronicities build up, and then there's a rash of experiences in an area, and then it all calms down,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah,
don't.
it's like the little flaps. No, you're right. And I like what you said earlier about like when you like, you look down these rabbit holes or you look at like a specific subject, or let's say like a lot of times as somebody who researches stuff, and I don't call myself a researcher. I'm a person who researches, right?
Yeah.
Uh I don't know what the difference is, but for me, it's a different. I feel like I haven't earned the right to be called a researcher per se, but I do research, and I have been for a long time. But like, anyway, but that's just semantics. Beside the point. Oftentimes, my friend, I don't know if you find this, but I will go in asking a question, right? And then I'll go in and try to research. I'll go through old books. I'll obviously go on the internet. I'll go through newspapers.com. I'll have a question or a specific thing I'm looking for. And what happens? I don't always find that one thing I'm looking for, but I find 10 other things that are adjacent to what I'm looking for that might be far more interesting. And so what I have found, and I'm not the first person to say this, I'm sure, like you said, Josh Cutchin will tell you the same thing. It's like, while I don't really truly personally believe that we'll ever really know what this stuff is, I don't even think that's the point. I think the mystery is the point. You really will find out a lot about a lot of other stuff tangentially. Like
Mhm.
we can ask better questions is what we can do by researching stuff more.
Yeah.
And the questions are maybe the point. It's like, having better discussions, maybe like just learning more about who we are and our place in this, reality that we find ourselves in. It
True.
really can go in a lot of different ways. But like, I gave up on the need to know what this stuff is like a handful of years ago, and that is so freeing. One time, I kind of told myself, I was like, 'cause when I was young, I truly believed that one day in my lifetime we'll know what UFOs represent, or what they are exactly, or who's driving them. Not necessarily that they were aliens, but that we would find out some kind of concrete answer. And I don't think that anymore.
It's the more you get into this, the harder it is to come to that conclusion that it's something that you can figure out. Because as
Yeah,
soon as you figure out one thing, you have 1,000 questions about the rest of it.
that's exactly right. Yeah, well, even like Jacques Vallée points out that there's this self-negating quality about it that just when we get kind of close to maybe like figuring something out, or we feel like we've nailed down all these patterns, it totally 180s and changes
Yep.
in like almost a trickster type archetype, and that is just part of it. Like if anyone who's been looking at this stuff for more than a couple years will understand how true that is.
Yeah.
To me, that's undeniable.
Yeah. Yeah. It's see, we we're exploring Michael Persinger's work,
Ah, yeah, sure.
and we're doing experimentations over the next few months where we go to locations because where we live is an eggshell of fault lines.
Oh, wow.
And so like just in the city, there's like 30 locations that are on a fault line that we
My
can
God.
take measurements on and do all of that. And the whole phenomena bomb could be an aspect of that.
Right.
But we also understand it's not going to be the whole answer.
No. But it's a great experiment. It's data.
Yeah,
It's awesome. Good for you.
but that's we're weird. That's what we do for fun.
But you know what? You nailed it. And that's that's the thing. It's like I've been so busy lately, and I have just a busy schedule ahead of me, busy summer.
Mm.
But I have a day off on Saturday, just a free day where I can do whatever I want. and I'm choosing to drive like 4 hours away from me to go look at this area called Buck Creek Valley that has a history of some very weird stuff. And so I kind of recruited a friend who's not into this stuff to go with me for the day. And yeah, I'm going to go see if I can poke the bear. Obviously, and it's funny we mentioned here we are talking about Josh Cutchin again, but Josh actually is. Can I tell a quick little story about him?
Yeah.
Because it was such an impactful moment for me. But about gosh, I guess it was about 2 years ago, not quite 2 years ago. Josh, myself, and a small group of other fellows, we took a little vacation to Point Pleasant, West Virginia, where the Mothman and all that, John Keeley and wonderful stuff happened back in '66 and '67. Anyway, the Flatbush Monster Braxton, West Virginia, is like an hour away. So of course we're going to go there too. So we go there. We know where the encounter happened, but one, it was like raining really hard, and two, it was on private property, and I thought we were going to be able to stand right on the area. And I kind of was, I think maybe I was hungry too or something like that. But I was like, oh man, what a letdown, like. And Josh kind of looked at me. He goes, "Hey man, it's about experiencing the magic of place. Isn't that awesome?" And I was like, "Wait, yeah, you're right." And it really hasn't. It made a big impact. I mean, it's one of those like kind of like moments you don't forget, especially when someone I respect and consider a really good friend like Josh
Yeah.
says that to you. I really made me change how I view a lot of this stuff. And like I said, like I'm gonna go to drive three, like this is what we do for fun. I'm gonna spend half my Saturday driving to a place just so I can experience the magic of place. Don't think anything's gonna happen. I don't think I'll see a Bigfoot or an orbit light or feel like a weird entity in the forest. Maybe I will, but it's about experiencing the magic of place. And I just
Yeah.
think that's like a fun lens to look at this stuff through.
It is. It is. About 12 years ago, I wouldn't have thought it.
Me too.
But I grew up in Nova Scotia, which is a magical place of itself.
Right, totally.
I grew up seeing UFOs every day.
Wow.
Like I remember specifically at 4 years old encountering orbs in my bedroom that were it was like they were fighting with each other, and then one of them touched me and zapped me, and I flipped my lid and ran to my parents.
When you say it zapped you, do you mean like it gave you do you get like a
It
physical
was it
jolt of
was like
energy?
it
Like
electrified me. It like I full on convulsed from it touching me. And
now are there fault lines around there where you grew up?
yes,
I wonder if they're like, like I'm interested in the whole Earth flight phenomenon. So yeah,
yeah. So
interest.
that zapped me that night. That night I end up with a severe appendicitis and was in hospital, and then my appendix suddenly went from inflamed ready to burst to okay.
Mm, that's weird.
And that was my introduction to weird.
Wow, that's a pretty I'm gonna bash you over the head. Like, are you paying attention now?
Yep.
Wow, that's that's amazing. So does that area where in Nova Scotia and that's where you grew up, you don't live there anymore?
No, I'm in BC now.
Okay. Does that area does it still have preponderance for activity?
Always, always. Mostly paranormal. Like
Uh-huh.
there was this house, more like an apartment building across from my house, and my bedroom window looked into the one of the top levels there.
Hmm.
And I saw this old woman in there every day, and I would wave hi to her and she'd wave back to me. I never thought anything of it until one day they were tearing down the building, and she was sitting in the building, and me being a 12-year-old kid, I flipped my lid, ran down there and said, "Hey, there's a
Yeah.
woman in the building." So they shut it down, called the cops. The cops cleared the building. There was nothing in there. Come
Mm.
to find out years later that the woman had died in the building.
Oh my God.
But the weird thing is, I went to her place all the time and did her lawn.
Mm.
She died before I was born.
Well,
She paid me. She gave me cake.
she gave you had a ghost cake?
I had ghost cake.
Dude, I don't think I've ever met anyone who's had I mean, like we were talking about 40 and food.
Yeah,
Buddy, you were given cake by a
a
woman
ghost.
who was not alive.
Yeah. So that experience, which is basically what I thought of when we talked about food and the paranormal. That experience is like wow. But the thing
Yeah.
is, it tasted like real cake to me.
I mean, it might have been.
It might have been, but like how did she get the ingredients? How did she
Right.
make it? Because that
And
yeah,
my biggest question is this like the best hack ever? Because is ghost cake have calories? If it's calorie free, I mean, look out.
yeah,
If you're trying to lose weight, you don't have to give up the things you love anymore. Now I can eat like a giant bowl of ghost spaghetti and not put it on, 10 pounds. Like
yeah.
this is the greatest thing I've ever heard. Now my life's mission is to find food made by
I go.
ghosts because yeah, it's calorie free. I don't know if that's the case about the calorie free. I'm putting that spin on it though.
Yeah. But that being said, there are connotations towards that. Like
Mhm.
when a ghost gives you food and you eat it, you become part of the ghost realm.
Yeah, like the fairy realm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But in my case, when I was born without breath, and my heart stopped in the process of being born, and it caused brain damage,
Hmm.
which changed how I communicate. I have to see the word in order to communicate it.
Hmm.
And so I didn't speak until I was 18 months old. And then at 4 years old, I died again. I drowned in the lake where everyone was swimming, and my sister
Oh,
was supposed to look after me. She turned away for 1 second, and I drowned.
oh my gosh.
My dad resuscitated me, and then at 14, I died again because of poisoning. I was poisoned by bleach. Someone prepared a donair on bleach, and I ate most of it, and it burned out my stomach lining, and I bled internally for a month and passed away
Wait,
3 times.
somebody did this to you?
Yeah,
Somebody poisoned you
yeah,
when you were 14?
yeah.
Did you find the people who did this?
Well, yeah, but the thing is, they closed up shop and ran.
Like you were intentionally poisoned when
Yeah,
you were 14 years old.
yeah.
Oh my God, you poor kid. Why? Do you have any like theories on why?
Uh, but he just hated life and hated his job and decided I'm gonna see what I can do.
Was anyone else poisoned?
There was six others poisoned.
Oh my God. Well, I'm so happy you're here with us right now, Al. There's been some bumps in the road there.
There's been some serious bumps,
Oh my
but
gosh.
but I think because I was already half in, half out, eating that food didn't take me all the way in.
Right. Well, because I mean, gosh, if you died one, two, three, is my counting right? Is it
At
three
least three
times?
times. At 14, though, that whole month, I died 3 times in that month. My
When
heart,
the same month you were poisoned with the bleach?
yeah, I bled internally for a month solid. Like they couldn't, they were fighting to keep fluid in me enough to build up my blood so that I wouldn't sanguinate and die.
I suppose there's some insights that maybe you have that are uniquely yours. Since I mean, like, no, I'm not trying to say like, oh, you had this near-death experience, and I'm not trying to graft any narrative onto what you experienced. I'm just saying, like, that is like, should be like a point of pride, man. You're a fighter, clearly. You want to be here, so
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that's wild. That's wild. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
The only thing actually I remember of that month is my dad sitting in front of me and me basically pacing back and forth, saying I'm not going to die. My dad says, "AJ, sit down. You're freaking me out."
Yeah.
And that brought me out of my delirium because the whole month I was delirious. Like I was in and out the whole time.
I can imagine. Like, oh, were you? I mean, the pain must have been just unthinkably horrible.
I remember the doctor saying to a nurse that anytime I needed pain meds, just give them to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she acquainted the pain level as equivalent to childbirth.
Good Lord. Yeah.
Now, this was for an entire month. So I
You're a tough spirit, friend. You are. I mean, like I feel like a lot of people are like, you know what, I can't do this anymore. And rightfully so.
yeah,
But that's a testament to your will.
yeah, I want to be here.
Yeah. Cool. Very cool. I mean, cool that you want to be here. Not cool that happened to you.
Yeah, I
I want to be clear.
understand. But
Yeah.
it's still it's a cool experience despite all the pain that I went through.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, I don't know anyone who's actually like, died 3 times. Now I do. No,
Yeah.
that's cool. Thank you. Thank you for making me cooler.
Right on. So with the whole food angle and
hmm
weirdness,
hmm
have you had any experiences with the stories and stuff like that in Nebraska?
Oh gosh, none that really. No, I can't think. I mean, like aside from I know some people who have had alleged Bigfoot on their property, and they've done some gifting with it, and two of the stories, and I tend to believe that these people at least believe what they're talking about. I can't prove their experiences because they're pretty crazy, but they both like a handful of people I know have been done gifting, and one person who did the gifting, they really regretted it because it caused some fairly intrusive behavior with it, whatever this Bigfoot entity is. I'm not really sure what Bigfoot is,
Yeah.
but um it got really like where it was like knocking on the door and peering through the windows and like wanting more. It's like if you feed a bear, well, the bear's going to come around more. It was kind of one of those situations, and it really like for a whole summer, this guy was like just terrified, didn't want to go outside. Like he said, he became a hermit, and like it was just like, and he seemed like a very cogent person. He wasn't like really not like and he didn't want me to share his name. He doesn't won't let me share his story, but he wanted to tell me, so
Okay.
he's not trying to get anything out of this, but like it was interesting to me. I'm like, oh man, yeah. So I guess that's kind of a food related exchange, I suppose. But yeah, and aside from that, nothing comes to mind.
So that makes me think of Bigfoot like a member of the Fae.
I mean, I'm open to that idea. I'm open to that idea. Gosh, not to bring up. Look, this is just we should have had Josh in this episode too. But I'm not sure if you read these books, but Josh and Timothy Renner wrote these two phenomenally wonderful books. My two favorite books about the Bigfoot phenomenon for sure.
Footprints.
But where the footprints end, volumes 1 and 2, and that book is, I don't want to say it's an argument for it, but it is showing it's really focusing on the paranormal side and the high strange side of Bigfoot encounters, which I mean I know some people who are in BFRO, which is like kind of the MUFON of the Bigfoot world,
Hmm.
and they purposely. I mean, I know two people who are in it. They told me this, like they legitimately leave out the weird stuff, or if the case is too weird, they just won't put it in there. Same thing with MUFON, which is the America's biggest,
Yeah.
or it's probably the biggest one in the world. Maybe I'm not sure, but they leave out the weird stuff too. And I tend to be one of those researchers, or at least in terms of my interest, where the the details, the weird details of these encounters and cases are the stuff I really want to pay attention to because there are patterns that emerge. And
Hmm.
Josh and Timothy really showed that. And Josh is, I mean, look, I'm not trying to make this whole podcast about Buttermilk's biscuit, but he really has kind of brought this older tradition that like ballet used and a lot of like religious scholars used of comparative analysis.
Hmm.
And to me, that really is kind of like a key avenue of research that only certain people have the gift to really do. Josh is definitely one of them. I think in his generation, I don't think there's a writer or a researcher quite like him. And I feel like his books will definitely be important in 100 years.
Hmm.
And so I do think the granular details about the weird, like, how we're talking about like food in relationship to high strangeness, these are the things I feel like we should be studying, not paying attention to government disclosure or how does the propulsion of a UFO work? That is so like mundane and boring to me. Not that it's not important. I'm just saying what personally gets me excited is not that stuff typically. It's more these granular details, and it's like, even think about orbs of light. The patterns of orbs of light are very interesting because where it appears location wise almost determines how people view it. So if it appears in a house, people say it's a spirit, it's a ghost phenomenon. If we see it in the forest, well, a guy like me is probably gonna say, "Oh my gosh, this is like precipitating, or this is like the precursor to a Bigfoot sighting." And if you see it in the sky, well, it's a UFO, it's an alien from another planet, or something like that. Like in these granular weird details, such as the food. I mean, like people laugh about talking about like, food in relationship to the paranormal, but it is very important.
Hmm.
I mean, just like, like you said, the Fae and many other cultures and folklores and mythologies and tradition, food plays a big part.
Well, food is the medium by which all cultures come together,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that's proven in the States, particularly
Yep.
in that the black culture that underlies all of America, the food that is truly American is of an African base.
Yes.
And so you have all of these little details
Uh-huh.
that are there, and if you really go searching for it, you find all kinds of interesting things that you wouldn't know, like the uh I'm forgetting the name of the show, but there's one that tracks uh uh the migration of food from Africa to the States and around the world.
Right.
And that in part to do with the slave trade, but it has just as much to do with the spice trade.
Yeah. Right.
And the spice trade, spices weren't just like what we have in our cupboard. They were commodities to be traded for wealth.
Yeah. Salt. Salt
Yeah,
is too. Yeah. There's
yeah,
wars fought over salt.
yeah. And when it comes to salt, you have the Fae. The Fae
Yep.
hate
They
salt.
don't love it. They
They
like that
hate
low
it.
blood pressure.
Yeah. But also uh Simonton, when he had his encounter with the aliens, they gave him pancakes made with no
Hmm.
salt.
Yep. Yep.
And so, but there's also more intricate details. Like I know people who have experienced uh in dream states dead people that they knew were dead, invited them into their house, and they knew, if I eat this meal, I'm not leaving.
Hmm.
Or they eat a meal with this creature, and it heals them of an illness that they've had all their life.
Right.
And so when you have these strange little details around food, what else are we missing?
Right. That's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. And that I couldn't agree more, man. I find this topic just so, I mean, like I could read endless books about this, like bring on the food in fairy cases. I will read about them all day long because I do get excited because I feel like, like I'm not we're not you and I probably, I mean, maybe you are and I don't know it, but like, I don't think I'm able to capture much physical data from UFOs. One, I can't predict where they're going to be. Two, I don't really have any instruments to collect data. Two, I wouldn't know it's three, I wouldn't know how to make anything of it. But listening to people's stories who have these encounters and hearing these stories and reading about a lot of different stories, you start to put together some interesting little detailed patterns that are very small or seem small, but maybe they're the thing. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
The little connections, like looking at Bigfoot
Hmm.
as a non-physical entity.
Yeah.
Most people they go, "What? You're
Yeah.
weird."
Yeah.
And well, even the weird guys,
Yeah.
they think that you're weird because
Yeah.
you're suggesting that it's something beyond what they think it should be.
Right.
Like it's
Right.
not this physical ape that's in the forest beating around and scaring people. But the
Yeah.
story, when you trace the stories, you
Hmm.
go back into the 1700s. The stories of the wild man, like Josh even brought up this. They wore clothes. They had language. They would fire muskets at people,
Yeah.
and they ate cooked food.
Yeah.
And then you progress to modern day, and everyone's saying, "Oh, it's an ape."
Hmm.
That doesn't compute,
No,
really.
it doesn't.
If you look at the history of it.
Yeah. And it's funny because I have found quite a few wild man cases in Nebraska. And they read like that. A lot of times, it's funny because they almost sound like the flannel man that Timothy Renner talks about so much. But like there's one case I just read about, it was like 1896, and there were a couple of different cases right along in the same like few towns, but they were experiencing this wild man who was going around and like taunting and teasing the farmers' cattle. And this thing, they were saying like it was covered with hair, had like a overalls on, and it was like really tall and big and imposing. And I'm like, this sounds like a clothed Bigfoot messing around with like livestock and ripping the heads off chickens and stuff like that. I mean, it's really like wild stuff. But it's weird. It's like I would like to trace further cases back in antiquity. Like and I know Josh and Timothy cover this because you want to see it's almost like is Bigfoot de-evolving into more of a primal, like what we expect it to be, like a mountain ape. Because I do think, especially with the UFO phenomenon, Valet and Keel have pointed out that it meets our expectations. Like whatever the projection of the UFO encounter is, it's kind of what we expect it to be. So, like in the kind of like this early space age, the 40s to the 80s, it was all about aliens from another planet, the Venusians and stuff like that. And that's what they were saying to people. And that's kind of how they present themselves. Whether you believe these stories or not, these are what the stories tell us. But it almost you wonder with Bigfoot is like, well, did Bigfoot start out more civilized like in the 1800s? So it was wearing clothes and like shooting a musket. You never hear about that now.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I don't think we have a case that's like that for 100 years at least.
it's true. It's true.
Wild.
My own experience with Bigfoot.
Mm.
Uh, we we have we live in Victoria City, which is a garden city,
Okay.
basically. Gardens everywhere, and there's nature preserves. Uh, One of them is called Christmas Hill,
Oh wow.
and it's like a foothill leading to Mount Doug
Hmm.
along that range. And I had three encounters with Bigfoot in that area in another phenomena bomb. Uh, we met a friend. We were sitting there. We did a tarot reading with him, and we were basically talking about that. And I noticed something peeking out of the bush a few feet from us. And it was like the head would pop up and it was a furry head and with glowing
What?
eyes. And I asked them if they saw it, and Buddy saw it and just caught a glimpse of it. And it kept doing this. And then I went over and looked over the bush, and there was nothing there.
Was this at, you said it was at night?
It was in the daytime.
This is
It was in
daytime.
broad daylight.
Phew.
And but the thing is, where this was happening is called a fairy circle by the
Oh my.
locals.
Okay. I love it.
So, and then another encounter, I was on the top of the hill looking down into that same area, and I saw like a 9 foot tall, hairy man walk along, and then he crosses between myself and a tree and disappears. And it just disappeared. Like there was no after the tree portion of him. It was like he came from nowhere and went to nowhere.
That's incredible. Oh my gosh, that's incredible. I love that.
But and then short time later, it was at the back of my house, and I was taking out the trash, and it growled at me. Like it stood up to its full, I 9-ish feet.
You saw this thing in your
Yeah,
backyard?
it was standing right by the garbage cans, because we have our compost bin right there, and it was reaching into the compost bin, grabbing stuff, and
Grabbing
it
food,
stood up
probably.
and growled at me, and because my broken brain, I don't run from things when they scare me. I run towards them because
Uh-huh.
I get angry.
Right.
I got angry and said, "You don't growl at me," and it ran off.
When was this? Was this recently?
This was 3 years ago.
Holy smokes.
It was one of the impetuses for starting this project.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That is, and then wow. So you almost wonder, like, I mean, did this thing follow you home? I mean, because that's I didn't get too much into my gifting case, but that is what the guy said. He started gifting at a wildlife management area about 10 miles away from his house. And then he started gifting at a creek about 5 miles away from his house. And then it appeared at his house. So he thinks he brought it home. That's why he told me, he's like, I would not get into gifting. And I'm like, oh, okay, good to know. So I mean, like,
Yeah,
uh,
in this instance, I think it did follow me home because uh, I think the smaller ones were like its kids,
right.
and it wanted to figure out, am I a danger? Am I
Hmm.
something dangerous? And it basically waited for me to come out.
Right.
And they people say that it has like a psychic component.
Yeah, the mind speak and yeah.
Yeah,
People communicate through with it telepathically and stuff.
but when it growled at me, it like I knew that it wasn't aggressive in that it wanted to hurt me. I knew that it was basically saying, "Get away."
Yeah, I'm eating.
Yeah. And me being a dope, I ran towards and scared it off. But
Oh, that's incredible. That's incredible.
but that being said, I've had other experiences on this street, like experiences of time slips
Hmm.
where I'm walking down the road and all of a sudden the whole area is different.
Really?
And it could have everything to do with the whole seismic thing happening and then my brain going to somewhere else
Uh-huh.
for that
Uh-huh.
time period, or like a daydream situation. But I'm not prone to vivid daydreams in that
Right.
way, like full on
Yeah.
the whole environment changed. Like I went from 2000s to 70s and a dirt road.
Uh-huh. Well, if I may ask your permission to speculate
Yeah,
for a moment. I mean, like, a thing that makes you incredibly unique is that you have died 3 times, sir.
yeah,
And I mean, I do think, I shouldn't say I think, I'm interested in the idea of this, whether we're talking about UFOs, Bigfoot, ghosts, any manifestation of high strangeness. I wonder, and this is, like, obviously Josh Cushin wrote a book about it, and Strieber talked about it. I think Kenneth Ring talked about it. So this is not an original idea, but it seems like whether or not it is all about death, there is some kind of component, it seems kind of, that has to do with death. And
yeah.
if you have, clinically died 3 times, you may have a predilection for this phenomenon. Because I would wonder, like, let's say you were walking with a buddy or your wife or whatever, when one of these like little time slip, like kind of like reality slips happen, would they experience it too? Like, have you been
Wondering.
with people if they when you've experienced some of these things?
Mm, Unfortunately, it's been by myself.
Yeah. See?
But I did have one experience where my wife was in it,
Oh,
but she was not in the house physically.
interesting.
I was walking down the street. All of a sudden, it became a dirt road, and the cars were like 1970s style vehicles. I came up to the bottom of the steps, and there was a package there for us, and so I picked it up because our mailboxes was downstairs, and I carried it up to the apartment, opened the door, and I saw my wife kissing another man, and then I
Oh my
realized,
gosh.
oh shit, that's not her, that's her twin sister. She doesn't have a twin sister. So it was like I was experiencing memories of another time
Mm-hmm.
that was enough similar enough that I knew that was my wife. My wife was actually cooking food
Right.
in this thing, and
There we
then
go. Food again, buddy.
yeah, food. Yeah, she was
Here
cooking.
we go. See?
And I could smell the onions cooking. Because when you think of dreams, if you're daydreaming, you're not going to have those sensory experiences.
Yeah.
And like I could smell the food cooking. I could smell the cleaner because she had cleaned the house and that. And the arrangement of the house was completely different. And then I take off my hat, and as soon as I close my eyes and open them again, I'm in the apartment by myself with the package at my feet, and I'm looking around. And the thing is, too, I looked down and I was wearing bell bottoms,
Hmm.
and then I closed my eyes, opened them, and I was wearing my work clothes.
That's wild, man.
So those experiences, I I I think I'm more like a magnet to
Yeah.
experiences because of that near death
Right.
thing where
I mean, you weren't
I
even near death, were you? You were like, I
I was
mean, you
dead.
died. Yeah. Yeah.
But the thing is, I think that never left.
Uh-huh. Yeah, maybe you bring a little residue of
Well,
some sort of
uh,
magnet or ability that, like, this
there's
phenomenon can, like, sense it on you.
yeah, there's a Buddhist teaching that teaches you if you will something, uh, there's parts of your brain. If you're thinking of something, you want to change who you are. This is something I learned recently. If you want to change who you are, uh, you put energy into the region of your brain that will change the aspects that you want to change.
Mm, I like that.
Now, if you think of it, when a person dies and comes back, you go there, you're going to have the energy of that realm suffusing you for that time period, and whatever you do there. And then when you come back, you're bringing that energy with you. That becomes
Uh-huh.
part of you. It's part of your brain.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting.
So,
Can I ask you a question just about your big friend? Like when you first went out to that area, because the first time you saw, right, your first Bigfoot encounter was the Bigfoot that was bobbing behind the bush.
yeah,
Were you specifically out there looking for a Bigfoot?
no,
No. Okay.
no. It, it's weird because we don't go looking for it, it finds us.
Right. I
And
mean, I go looking for it,
yeah,
but it doesn't find me yet, so
I think
maybe that's my problem.
yeah, if you're going looking for it, it's gonna be like, hey,
Yeah, I'm looking for all kinds of weird stuff, dude.
yeah,
That's why maybe I don't have that many, really. I've never had like I've definitely seen some things that I'm like, I don't know. But I haven't had that like confirmation experience like what you're describing. Like I have not had a Bigfoot by my compost thing growling at me.
yeah,
Like then if I had that, I'm like, well, case closed, baby.
yeah.
Like Bigfoot's a reality, like it's one of these things. But for now, I just have to, focus on other people's stories, and which is wonderful. It doesn't bother me, but
Yeah. But if you look at it, and when you go to these places to investigate, when you go there, you set your mind up when you get there.
mhm.
I'm not looking for anything in particular,
Yeah,
but I'm open to whatever's here.
I like that.
And see what happens, what comes to you.
Yeah, well, I'm going to investigate a small rural wooded area where a lot of weird stuff's happening, and I'm going to try that approach. I'm just going to say, I'm not looking for anything specific. I'm just, if you want to have a, if you want to hang out while I'm walking, taking a little hike through here, that would be great.
Conversations with Bigfoot.
Yeah, exactly, man. Exactly.
Um, so the whole salt end of things, there there's instances where farmers,
Mhm.
talking about rural areas, farmers would salt around their property to keep bad spirits out. But
Interesting.
for another reason too, weeds and that
Right.
couldn't pass that salt barrier,
Uh-huh.
and so they would salt around their properties, or they would put uh, plant special plants around their property as well, that could live in salty environments and would draw salt out of the ground,
Uh-huh.
uh, and they would they would just allow these to grow, and they would never pick them. They would never harvest them. They would say
Mhm.
that's for whoever wants it.
Right.
But that too, they would also put out bowls of milk with honey
Uh-huh.
for the land spirits.
Yeah,
And
the elementals.
yeah,
I love that.
and so you have all of these traditions. Like my wife and I, when we first moved into this building, our cat, who's gone now, our
Uh-huh.
cat was literally thrown off of his bed. And he's like 3 feet
Whoa.
from the floor. He was literally picked up from his bed and thrown
Oh
off of
my
it.
God.
And as soon as that happened, I said, okay, whatever's here, you're out.
Yeah. Seriously.
And booted it out. And I like went through and saged the whole house,
Yeah.
uh, uh, and basically, uh, one of my neighbors talked to the landlord. The landlord said, asked me if I was having problems with one of the neighbors
Right.
because I was so loud and get the hell out of my house.
Yeah. Oh man. I'll tell you what, I have two cats. I'm a big cat person. And if an entity touches my cats,
You,
that's where the gloves come off, pal. We
yeah,
got a problem. Yeah.
but after that, after that last experience with that, never happened again.
Good.
But he would sit and stare at the door.
Right.
Nothing would be out there. A few times we had knocks on the door. I'd go and open the door and there was nothing there.
Wow.
But now he's gone. We have his footprints appear every once in a while because
Really?
he was a dirty boy. He would
Uh-huh.
he uh his powder he would fling it out of the litter box because he hated
Oh
the
God.
smell of it. He would fling it
Yeah.
out, and then you'd see his paw prints everywhere. And one day we'd gone through, cleaned the whole house. There was no chance. His paw prints went from the front door all the way to the bedroom and up to the bed.
Whoa. Jeez, that is amazing.
So they do stay with you when they're gone.
Oh, I love hearing that. Yeah, because I lost my sweet Mr. Binkles about 4 years ago, and you never get over
No, you don't.
that.
No, it's
I mean, like I'm still like I'm a damaged I will always be a little bit damaged because I mean, I don't have children and my cats are my children and like
yeah,
I put like a lot I put a lot into them. I love these little guys. So I like hearing that though
yeah,
because I still talk to my old cat.
yeah, yeah, and that keeps, even if it's an egregore of them,
Right?
it keeps them around for you,
Yeah.
and you'll have that comfort because animals, they know when you're not right,
Yeah.
and they'll come over. And our Merlin, he would come over and he'd look up at me, and he had like bright green eyes,
Mm,
and you could see the emotion. He knew that I wasn't feeling right that day, and he came up and hugged me. And that day
yeah.
I had a heart attack,
Oh my Lord.
and my heart had been for months, because my wife does a tea that reduces inflammation in my body. For months, I'd been having like a flu symptoms around my heart, and it was
Goodness
slowly squeezing my heart until it stopped working right.
God.
And the cat that day looked at me and was like, didn't want me to leave the house.
Right.
And then I went to work and I started having pains in my left arm, and I was like, what's going on? Because
Yeah.
I I'm only in my early 40s. There's no way I'm having a heart attack.
Yeah. Right.
But I had a heart attack because well, it's called myocarditis.
Sure. Yeah.
It's the sheath of the heart becomes inflamed and impedes the function of the heart.
Yeah. Oh, buddy.
And so, like, he knew I was off for weeks
Yeah.
because he was always clinging to me, and I didn't understand why. And I'd give
Right.
him hugs and pets and stuff, and
Uh-huh.
then he calmed down, and that. And but he knew, and uh I listened to my boss at the time, who drove me right to the hospital
Mm,
and basically saved my life. Because if I hadn't
yeah.
have gone, I've been dead. I would have been dead that day.
Oh,
Like,
God.
no coming back from that one.
Yeah. Jeez.
But that's it. Just the animals stick around, and
Yeah.
they will warn you if something weird is around.
Mm-hmm.
Um, have you have you had any experiences with your animals acting weird?
Oh, cats are just so like their default setting is weird. So it's you know what I mean? Like my cats are just weird. They're like twin brothers and they're just odd little dudes. And I will yeah, I have not had kind of like that but honestly the thing is like it's not something I've probably been looking for.
Mm.
I think I just assume like, oh, their behavior is so weird. Like, they're like jumping at the air for no reason or like, staring at the corner. And oftentimes I think, although I've read that cats like to stare at like right angles, it soothes them, it hypnotizes them. So
Okay.
often they'll find that like even big like lions and tigers stuff, when they're caged, they'll look at the corners because it's like self-soothing. Isn't that interesting? I didn't know that. But no, I can't say that I've noticed anything that like really stood out. Like it was like we had crazy weather here last night, like really crazy. Like there's a ton of flooding. We got like 5 inches of rain overnight, which is an insane amount of rain.
Yeah.
And my cat this morning, like six, like right after the storm stopped, came and meowed really loud, like right in my ear. Just like wait, basically saying like, wow, that was crazy, wasn't it? I'm like, he's like, let's get up and have some breakfast and talk about this.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yep.
buddy, it's too early.
Yeah. They're they're great for that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Um, Merlin would tell me off if I didn't get his breakfast right away. Like,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
yeah,
They'll let you
no.
know.
Yeah. Uh, but going back to the food angle, like, we were talking about salt
Yeah.
and that it's also a protection
Mhm.
that the magic people use. They'll
Right.
do a circle in
Oh yeah.
salt, and one lady said it causes chaos every time she does it.
Interesting.
But when you think of it, her animals want to eat the salt.
Hmm.
So she's casting this circle, trying to be all magical and that, and then the dog comes barreling in and starts eating all the salt. Creates
Yeah.
chaos.
Savory, delicious. That's
But
awesome.
but so you have stuff like that. Sage is
Yeah.
another big one.
Oh
It's a
yeah.
cleanser,
Hmm.
but it's onions.
Mm. I cook
Onions,
with onions a lot, so there you go.
yeah. Well, uh, what they would do if someone was sick, you cut a good slice of onion, put that on their chest, and let it sit there for an hour, and then overnight they'll start feeling better. So,
Wow. I haven't heard
and
of that one.
yeah, it's a folk healing thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
My wife, one day she was puttering around cleaning the house, and she put the printer on the floor and was just trucking along and kicked it and broke her toe.
Oh,
And uh, I'm laughing now, but I'm really cringing because I know the pain that she feels.
yeah. Oh, it's the
And
worst.
one of the old ladies that she worked with said, "Just peel a potato and put that on your toe, and it'll take the pain away."
I've heard about that.
And she did it, and to her amazement, it took the pain away.
Interesting. I've also heard about the potato that transfers whatever. There was like a story I heard about someone's grandma, or a kid had a wart, and the grandma said, "Do you mind if I buy that wart from you?" And the kid's like, "Huh?" And the grandma gave the kid 10 cents, put a potato on the wart. Next day, the wart disappeared, but appeared on the grandma's hand in the same spot. And I'm like, that's wild.
It's
And she
wild.
literally purchased the wart from him.
Which, see, those stories are cool. Those like
Uh-huh.
uh but when you're looking at the weird, it is in that realm of magic.
Hmm.
It's always like it's either magic of place, magic of moment.
Right. A magic, even like, the state of someone's mind, like
Yeah.
it is one of these, I think it's a frustrating thing for a lot of people, because there are a lot of people who, and I don't begrudge them, who are trying to look for some concrete evidence for that, quote unquote proof. And I just think, like, I don't know if this stuff is ever literally what it is. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so I feel, like, and this is a very woo-woo idea. And I'm not saying I kind of take the word believe out of my vernacular when I'm talking about high strangeness because, like, I'm agnostic to everything. I think there's something genuine about it, but I don't know what it is. But so I feel like there's this tendency to look at, like, a dramatic UFO encounter, like the Frank Simonton thing, as that being a literal representation of a non-human intelligence, where I sort of think it's a projection of a version of a manifestation of a non-human intelligence,
Yeah.
which sounds so weird. Like, we'll prove that. I can't. That's just like an idea I like right now. In a year, I may totally change my mind, but
Yeah.
I like, like, I guess, like, go back to your example. Well, did you see a literal, like, a species called Bigfoot that's standing by your compost thing that night, or that disappeared when you observed it, from afar? I don't think so. Like, it just, that I would lean towards no. It's not a physical animal that we haven't discovered yet. Or I don't really think that because a UFO occupant says they're from Venus, that means they're from Venus. Do you know what I'm saying? So I think it's like they're using part of our narrative structure and our stories, to conform to something that we can kind of understand a little bit.
The the story informs.
Yeah, yeah. And I think where we are on the evolutionary path, where we are technologically, has something to do with it, because, we don't hear about, flying airships anymore. I would love to see a classical flying submarine,
Yeah.
hover above a city. That would be cool. We don't see that anymore. We don't even see flying saucers anymore. And we haven't. I mean, maybe, I'm sure I shouldn't say we haven't. There are probably cases of flying saucers I don't know about, but it's not like it was for 4 decades,
More
where
tic tac.
that was the vehicle du jour of the aliens. It's
Yeah.
not that way anymore. In fact, like, you almost rarely hear about structured craft anymore,
Hmm.
aside from, like, all the kind of tic tac stuff, which I personally think is just exotic military
Tac.
aircraft that they're testing on their own people. That makes more logical sense to me, I suppose.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, it seems like the light phenomenon is kind of back, where I almost like to think of light phenomena as like the raw form of whatever this
This is
thing is, or stuff is, and that's waiting to decide what shape to take next.
that's cool. I
Yeah,
like
I have no basis of evidence for it. It's just an idea, a thought experiment that I kind of like to toss around in my head at night.
um now what is your favorite food?
Oh God, that is a incredibly tough question. I think, we went back and forth when you asked me to be on your show about, food, and I'm a food-based person. So I like, like, specific dish, or like genre, like
Genre.
I could, oh boy. I mean, I love, like, Mediterranean food, so I love, like, Italian food, Spanish food, French food, like, I would say somewhere in that region probably, but I'm also, like, been lately cooking a lot of Korean food.
Hmm.
And I love making Thai food. I love making Indian food. So that's a tough question. I would say, just because right now, because my garden's coming in with a lot of tomatoes and things, I'll go with Italian food.
Italian.
But ask me tomorrow and I'll have a different answer.
See, the type of food that you experience in an encounter may differ with what you like.
Oh, yeah.
Think of it that way. Like, um, a few months ago, we were watching this historical show, uh, where a guy took mushrooms and made
Hmm.
mushroom ketchup,
Sure.
and it's just basically a distillation of the juices of mushroom, uh, with salt,
Right.
and
Well, it has a
made,
very umami flavor. Yeah, I'm sure it would
yeah.
be delicious.
So it's like an earthy,
Yeah.
savory addition. And then you take the mushrooms and you dry them and you have a powder.
Sounds great.
And so for months after that, I had dreams about mushrooms,
Oh.
mushroom circles and
Uh-huh.
stuff like that. And we encountered mushroom circles in the woods when we were walking. And that's a fey sign.
Yes, it is.
Now, I'm wondering if you walked up, picked one of those mushrooms, if it's an edible variety, not
Uh-huh.
poisonous ones that would
Yeah.
wipe the floor
Cause
with you or
yeah.
send you to the moon.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But if you picked one of those and took it home and ate it, if they would suddenly come to your house or mess with you.
Right. Yeah, that I never thought about that. That's very interesting. It's funny, like are you aware of the Delphos, Kansas case?
I've
A
heard of
UFO
it.
case?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually it's funny because it's like according to like Jacques Vallée and like Ted Phillips, this is one of the cases with the best physical evidence. But I'll do a quick paraphrase. In like I think 1971, this kid Ronnie Johnson has steps outside of his house, sees this crazy burning globe. It had like a metallic shape to it. It wasn't just a light.
Mm.
And he went inside, and then we came back out. There was this big burned circle, and it was like had like white dust on it. The mom touched it. Her hand went numb. Her hand was numb the rest of her life, by the way. And she wiped it on her leg, and that part of her leg was numb the rest of her life. But what happened is, the next day, a mushroom circle formed in that area, and I'm like, well, that is such a. I mean, if you want to tie UFOs and the fate together, boom, right
Boom.
there,
Yeah. Now, I wonder how many situations something like that happened that MUFON omitted that portion of it because it was too woo.
I'm sure tons. I mean, I know locally there's a. I'm not going to say their name because I don't want to get them in trouble, but I know a person in MUFON, and they tell me the same thing. And they're very frustrated. They're like, we get so many cases that are super weird and super odd, and they'll be like, like poltergeist activity with the people afterwards, like you always hear. And MUFON simply goes, those cases are weird. Science will never take that seriously. So, and I think that's, I mean, like, while I think science has a role to play for sure
Yeah,
in trying to maybe understand this stuff better, it's not the only discipline I think out there. I think a philosopher or, I mean, a musician has just much right to be academically talking about this phenomenon as a scientist does to a
exactly.
certain degree. So I can't really remember where I was going with that, but but uh but yeah, yeah, yeah. It's all so fascinating. I wish they wouldn't leave. I wish there was like a database that would just put what the account was,
Yeah.
not leave out the details. It's like some of us want to hear about the weird stuff, like, or I think a lot of us do.
Well, I think they're doing a huge disservice by not recording it
Yeah.
as it was experienced
Yes. Yeah. Well, they're
because
they're tailoring it to a conclusion that they want.
exactly rather than they're intentionally biasing the situation.
Yeah. And it's that, and to me, I would think extraneous details that you weren't looking for as a scientist would tell you a lot. So it's really just doing bad science. That's bad data collection.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
oh man.
And like the odd it's the odd details. Going back to that point again, the odd
Yeah.
details um in Nova Scotia, one of the UFOs that is openly talked about and was openly admitted by the government as something they didn't understand was in I think it was Stellarton, Nova Scotia. A craft came down and hit the water, and there was
Oh yeah.
a glowing sludge on the water,
Yeah.
and the government moved in right away, and it wasn't just the Canadian government, it was Canadian, British, and US government
Yeah.
all converged on the area, and it was not talked about again, but all the
I mean,
people
now it's a famous case though.
now it's a famous case
Yeah.
because no one shut up about it and they didn't they because I've talked to people who lived in that area and experienced it. they would not shut up about it, even when the government basically said, you cannot talk about this.
Right.
They they talked to their friends and family, and they kept that story alive until they were able to tell it to someone who then televised it or
Yep.
put it on the radio. It was first on the radio.
Yeah.
Um, Weirdly, my dad was there that night. He
Oh,
didn't experience it. He didn't see anything at all, but he was there that night that happened because he was wondering what all the hubbub on the side of the road was. But
that's wild.
it's Nova Scotia. What have you heard about bread and weird experiences with bread?
I know traced back to the fairy lore, but aside from that, not too much.
Um, Death eaters or sin eaters. Have you ever
Uh,
had
no,
sin eaters? They would lay a loaf of bread on the chest of someone who's died,
right.
and then they would hire a sin eater to come and eat the bread.
I just saw this in the latest season of Fargo.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah.
so what they're doing, they're literally eating the sins of the dead person so they can cross.
Hey,
And
wow. That's cool.
it's a cool thing. And then when you go to X Files and the show X Files, they literally have the Sin Eater eating people and
Hmm.
then remaking them.
Ah,
So basically, he eats their diseases and then brings them back as a healed person.
interesting.
So what's what do you think is happening there?
I mean, like, I don't other, I mean, aside from you just telling me, I have not heard of it, so I'd probably have to read up to make any kind of informed, like, comment on it. I mean, I love it as a story and a, piece of folklore. I mean, I think it's cool. It definitely sounds like, a Western Christian, religious tradition of,
Yeah.
wanting to cross over and get into heaven. So I take a lot of that stuff probably with a pretty hefty bag of salt. But yeah, aside from Fargo, wow, what a great representation of the senator. Did you see this season?
Uh,
The
I
last
didn't
season?
I didn't get
There
to.
is well, you just kind of put it together, and I kind of inferred by the story that that's what was happening. But there's this kind of character in it that's like kind of a unstuck in time per se, and
Mhm.
he is doing the sin eating. I'm like, oh, that actually explains a lot. Now I need to go back and rewatch it with fresh eyes because I'm like, oh, now I understand.
This was a great conversation on the paranormal with Steve. We hope to do it again sometime. You can find Steve on his podcast, High Strangeness, or on his shows, Skinwalker Ranch, Tag, and Don't Worry, Darling. Till next time, please like, follow, and subscribe on whatever platform you're following us on.